Alright, it's been another 3 months and 45 books read. Let's talk about the top 10 that I read in Q2. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizard of Reads, and as always guys, I'm Andrew. Today, of course, like the intro says, I've got my Q2 top 10 2022 reads for you. But before we get into that, make sure you're liking and subscribing so you can get regular updates for when I put out new content, because I drop it twice a week. And that said guys, without really any mucking about, let's just dive right on into this top 10 because I have got some amazing books. Now I read a little bit less than I did in Q1, but I mean 45 books is not too shabby. And of those 45, I've got some amazing reads. Let's just start off with like the coziest of them, which of course, surprising nobody, is going to be Travis Baldrey's Legends and Lattes. Guys, this is a slice of life fantasy that, it says right here, a novel of high fantasy and low stakes. And while this novel does have stakes, it's so comforting to basically go from the mercenary life to running a coffee shop in a town that's never heard of coffee, making new friends, establishing a great found family. Guys, I did a dedicated review for this. You can check it right up there. This one was just awesome. I really enjoyed this one, and it's currently been pulled in its self-pub format because the traditional is getting ready to come out here soon. Really, all that's changed in the physical is, I think a font change down here. Maybe up here as well. I don't know. But you'll be able to get your hands on the traditionally published version here soon. Alright, next up, one of the best sci-fi. In fact, there's a few sci-fi titles here, but one of the best sci-fi that I've read in a long time is going to be Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Time. The ideas and the concepts that are presented to the reader within this story are just fascinating. This tackles evolution, different cultures, just the fight for survival, exploring the stars, history, what is recorded as history. There's just so much here to enjoy that I couldn't help but give this one 5 stars. Now the follow-up's a different question. I didn't like Children of Ruin quite as much as Children of Time, but this one's really cool because you get to see the way intelligence develops and just how kind of societal structures can be formed while intelligence is developing. It's really, really interesting. This one is definitely one to check out. Alright, speaking of sci-fi, we have got In the Orbit of Sirens by T.A. Bruno. Kind of like Children of Time, this one is about humanity's fight for survival. But this is because we kind of went and created AI, and the AI decided to not play nicely. And so humanity has had to flee and start over and just kind of deal with all the struggles that come from, trying to survive on an alien environment and make this alien environment your home. Again, great found family. This one's got a little bit more of a fantastical element to it, rather than Children of Time is more hard sci-fi. And frankly, In the Orbit of Sirens, this entire trilogy, I'm getting ready to wrap this one up, has been absolutely stellar. In fact, I could have put Winds of the Quasars, on the Winds of Quasars, I should say, on this list, but I didn't want to, put more than one author from each, series or, work. You know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, moving right along, we have got, surprising nobody, The Coward by Stephen Arion. This is the story of Kel Krassia, whose legend, after his mighty deeds of being the only survivor, has spread across the land. The problem is the legend might be a little inflated, and Kel has just kind of retired from the hero life. He's this farmer who just wants to be left alone to deal with his trauma, and life just is not willing to let him do that. I love this book because it's got strong David Gemmell vibes, on top of the fact where, Kel Krassia is probably one of the most realistic characters I think I've read in a long time. He just wants to be left alone. He's done his time. He realized being a hero was foolish. And yeah, I absolutely love this book. I am just now getting ready to start the second book, The Warrior, which is releasing in August, and I am anticipating another fantastic read. Alright, this is one I read very recently, and I am so happy to be talking about this one. And it is The Legend of Blackjack by A.R. Witham. Guys, this one is probably an instant classic for me. This is one that I will probably revisit many times throughout my life. It's got a kind of agelessness to it. You know, Page Master, Never Ending Story, Chronicles of Narnia. This is a portal fantasy about a young boy who is just ripped out of his life and kind of shoved into this fantastical situation and goes on many great adventures, all while learning about himself, learning about just this magical world, learning about magic, just learning about everything. This is a ton of fun, and I cannot recommend this enough. And if you get the paperback, this has got 21 full-page illustrations in it. I loved this reading experience. What Jack Swift goes through. I mean, he loses his father at a very young age, gets orphaned, put into the system. He is not in a good situation. He's in one of those houses where the person's just collecting a check. They've got like 20 kids and, you know, the crazy stuff like that. And then, like, you know, she loses all those kids and she starts taking it out on Jack. And then he gets rescued by a magical rhino and yanked into a portal world. And that is just awesome. Like, a magical rhino just shows up and is like, hey, you're coming with me. He's like, oh, okay. And yeah, so I love this book. I absolutely loved it. All right, next up, we have got probably the biggest surprise in a while. And that's Nomads of the Sea by Kobe Zucker. I was so shocked by how good this book was. This is incredibly polished. It's a beefy little book. But, well, I say little book. It's beefy. It's a chunker. But this one, the cover kind of gave me a certain vibe. And I thought there was going to be a little bit heavy of a romance element. No. This is epic fantasy. There is battles. There is combat. There is training. There is magic. There is fights for survival. And very little romance in here. This is Sig on the cover. And, I mean, this one was pretty much flawless. Like, one of the most polished books I think I've ever read. Nice little callbacks. Great pacing. Fantastic characters. Honestly, The Legend of Blackjack and this one are in the running to be some of the best books that I read this year. They will probably make my top 10 of the year. Some of these might as well. I don't know. Like, I've been reading so many great books lately. It's kind of hard to just say, yep, this one's going into the top 10 of the year. But those two are very much in contention. All right. And then, of course, I've got to have a Stephen King book. And you know it's going to be The Stand. Again, I always pull off the dust jacket just to prove to you that this is a copy of The Stand because it's a non-standard dust jacket. I loved The Stand. This is a book that I put off reading for, I'm going to say 15 years. And I am so sad that I did. But now that I'm glad that I read it because this is a very, very, very just fun tale. Like, I loved everything about this. Except for, like, there's, like, one character in here who I didn't like. And if that character had been removed, this could have probably been one of the best books that I've read this year. Now, that character is, in fact, in here. So this will probably not make the top 10 of the year, but it does make the top 10 of Q2. And, guys, like, if you have not read The Stand, like, it is heavy. Stephen King, within this one, he makes you fall in love with characters super fast, and then you kind of have to deal with losing a lot of these characters. And it's just watching the rise and the fall of societies and the way that people come together and the way that they struggle through adversity is just chef's kiss. Super good. All right, and then we've got 3 that I don't own physically. So we're going to start with Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary. This was one of my patron reads. My patron Stacy was like, hey, I really like this. I think you should read it. And I was like, you know what? I've been hearing a lot of buzz about it. Mike really enjoyed this one. I'll give it a shot. I got the audiobook, which is narrated by Ray Porter. And oh my goodness, that book was amazing on audio. The experience that you get through audio, because, you know, there's a certain character that is best kind of narrated to you within this book. I can't really talk about it. But, I mean, again, this is another struggle for survival. It's hard sci-fi. But, like, it's just really one guy out in, you know, a different galaxy trying to find the answer to save humanity. And his struggles therein. And it's just so good. It's fun. It's entertaining. It makes the science really accessible. At least through the audiobook it does. Ray Porter kind of, his narration kind of cleans it up a little bit and presents it to you in this beautiful little package where you can be like, oh, I may not know what those words mean, but I kind of understand what you're trying to do with it. So yes, that one makes the list. Then we've got David Gimmel's Lord of the Silver Bow. You knew David Gimmel was going to make the list because, frankly, I love David Gimmel. And this is probably my first historical fiction in years. And there was just like enough of a, kind of mythological kind of fantasy element there to really make this a smooth transition into historical fiction. And frankly, I would highly recommend this to fantasy readers who would like to try historical fiction because it uses that mythology of like seers and prophets and stuff like that. And the wrath of the gods, because this is Trojan based or historical fiction. I keep wanting to say fantasy. That it makes it very accessible because you're like, oh, is there something going on here? Like, what's going on? Anyway, the battles, the characters, the ugly King Odysseus, just a lot to love here. It was such a poignant tale. It made me feel all of the emotions. It made me feel anxiety. I cannot wait to talk about this whole trilogy later down the road because, frankly, I just absolutely loved this reading experience. My last book here that I have to talk about is Of Honey and Wildfires by Sarah Shorn. This is the fantasy western that exploded my interest and love for this subgenre of fantasy. I picked this one up on a whim. I was in kind of this little bit of a reading slump, and I was just kind of scrolling through my Kindle, and I'd purchased it like 6 months ago, and it was just sitting there languishing. And I just randomly opened it and started reading. And after I read that first chapter, I was like, okay, I found the book that I'm going to read. That first chapter is not only beautiful, but it is heartbreaking. And then that theme continues throughout the book. Like, it is a tragic story. The Wild West, we kind of romanticize like gunfights and stuff like that. It was hard times for people, A lot of people lived in squalor. They lived in subpar standards. There was a lot of oppression. There was a lot of death. This presents a lot of the Wild West style of storytelling with a nice fantasy twist while still delivering that emotional punch of what living on a frontier is like. And guys, I cannot recommend Of Honey and Wildfires enough. Now guys, that is the end of my top 10 list. Please let me know in the comments down below what some of the top 10 books that you read in the last 3 months are. That said, guys, please like, comment, subscribe, hit that Patreon if you want to support what I'm doing here. And as always, till next time, peace out, stay magical, bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons.